Hi everybody, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films. And that was, we have this big box in the back that just has, don't know what these are. And so yesterday we showed some footage that was written on the leader, Farm Kids. And this one is, it says second roll, and then it's in cursive, so I have no idea what it is. But it seems to be something related to oil drilling, and it's just long shots of that stuff. So, yeah. Anyways, let's watch this. Could have been a slideshow thing by the AFL-CIO. Called Mouseland. Enjoy.
It's a story of a place called Mouseland. Mouseland was a place where all the little mice lived and played and were born and died. And they lived much as you and I do. They even had a parliament. And every 4 years they had an election. They used to walk to the polls and cast their ballot. Some of them even got a ride to the polls. Got a ride for the next 4 years afterwards, too. Just like you and me. And every time on election day, all the little mice used to go to the ballot box and they used to elect a government. A government made up of big, fat, black cats. Now, if you think it's strange that mice should elect a government made up of cats, you just look at the history of Canada for the last 90 years, and maybe you'll see that they weren't any stupider than we are. Now, I'm not saying anything against the cats. They were nice fellows. They conducted the government with dignity. They passed good laws. That is, laws that were good for cats. But the laws that were good for cats weren't very good for mice. One of the laws said that mouse holes had to be big enough so a cat could get his paw in. Another law said that mice could only travel at certain speeds so that a cat could get his breakfast without too much physical effort. All the laws were good laws for cats, but oh, they were hard on the mice. And life was getting harder and harder. And when the mice couldn't put up with it anymore, they decided something had to be done about it. So they went en masse to the polls. They voted the black cats out. And they put in the white cats. Now the white cats had put up a terrific campaign. They said all that Mouseland needs is more vision. They said the trouble with Mouseland is those round mouse holes we've got. If you put us in, we'll establish square mouse holes. And they did. And the square mouse holes were twice as big as the round mouse holes. And now the cat could get both his paws in. And life was tougher than ever. And when they couldn't take that anymore, they voted the white cats out and put the black ones in again. And then they went back to the white cats and then to the black cats. They even tried half black cats and half white cats. And they called that coalition. They even got one government made up of cats with spots on them. They were cats that tried to make a noise like a mouse, but they ate like a cat. You see, my friends, the trouble wasn't with the color of the cats. The trouble was that they were cats. And because they were cats, they naturally looked after cats instead of mice. Presently, there came along one little mouse who had an idea. My friends, watch out for the little fellow with an idea. And he said to the other mice, look, fellas, why do we keep on electing a government made up of cats? Why don't we elect a government made up of mice? Oh, they said he's a Bolshevik. Lock him up. So they put him in jail. But I want to remind you that you can lock up a mouse or a man, but you can't lock up an idea.
You could go so many different ways with that, and I know we can talk politics, but we're just going to keep it a fable. How about that? We'll just keep it a fable. But it's interesting nonetheless. I have some interesting AFL-CIO films that are definitely pro-labor, and of course I tend to go that way. I tend to be a Bolshevik. All right, let's. I've shown Clothing, the second edition by Encyclopedia Britannica. It is now time to see the third edition. Enjoy.
Clothing. All of us wear it every day. To keep warm, to look attractive, to keep from getting wet. There are many reasons why we have different kinds and styles of clothing. Some clothing identifies helpers in the community. There is clothing for activities, for safety on the job, and special clothing for different kinds of jobs. There is clothing for sports, clothing for special occasions, special events, and clothing just for fun. It is often who we are, where we are, and what we happen to be doing that determines what we choose to wear. Our great variety of kinds and styles of clothing. The clothes we wear today are made from many different materials. In pioneer days, however, people had to make clothing from materials that were readily available to them. Some adopted the ways of the Plains Indians. They hunted deer and used the skins to make durable clothing.
So that's what they used to wear a long time ago.
Yeah, still there.
Well, a very long time ago, some people actually wore leaves and grasses. Others tied and sewed animal skins together and wore them for protection. They decorated the things they wore with bones, shells, feathers, anything they found attractive. That was pretty much the extent of clothing people wore until someone found a way to weave cloth that could be sewn and would wear well. The Egyptians refined the weaving process. They invented the loom and raised flax to weave linen cloth, which was sturdy and light. In India, people grew cotton for their clothing. While in the Far East, the Chinese raised silkworms. The silk from the cocoons made fine, strong thread and cloth of even finer, lighter, and stronger quality than linen or cotton. Soon, people in Europe who wore leather, fur, and wool traded their heavier clothing for the lighter cloth from the East. Before long, wealthy people dressed in the finest clothes, made of the most beautiful and costly materials. The growing demand for new clothing brought about new business. New, elaborate styles were designed to please the wealthy. Tailors set up shops to sew the elaborate clothing. Shoemakers fashioned leather into boots and belts to match. Even blacksmiths turned from shoeing horses and forging swords to making buckles and elaborate armor. Because of the great demand for elaborate clothing, European weavers found their own ways of producing fine new cloth. They found new ways of dyeing it with brilliant colors for the dazzling but not always comfortable styles demanded by those who could afford them. The early American settlers wore plain, sturdy clothing, often made of wool from sheep. For a long time, all the work had to be done by hand.
They had a very hard time. To make cloth, the fibers has to be arranged evenly so that I can spin them into thread and yarn. Then when I weave my cloth, the threads will be fairly uniform. This gives an even texture to the material.
Clothing a family was slow, hard work. All this changed, however, with the invention of spinning machines, automatic looms, and the sewing machine. Spinning machines and automatic looms produced yarn and cloth much faster. Now, sewing machines could produce clothing in greater quantities and in far less time than ever before. People enjoyed wearing the new machine-made fashions, which made the latest styles easily available. Today, we have new styles and many new materials from which our clothes are made. We still wear many clothes made of natural fibers like cotton and wool, but we have also learned to make new kinds of fibers by using many different raw materials. From wood pulp, we make rayon. Crude oil can be made into Orlon and Acrylon. From coal, we can make fibers like nylon. At first, the raw materials are reduced to a powder and made into staple fibers. The fibers are carded and gathered to make thick, loose strands. These strands are spun into yarn and thread. To make cloth, thousands of threads are woven automatically on high-speed looms. Special machines dye the cloth or print it with colorful patterns. Some cloth is knitted. Knitting is different from weaving. The material it produces can stretch. To make clothing, special fabrics are chosen for each kind of garment. To mass-produce blue jeans, denim is unrolled. Many layers of material are stacked and cut according to different patterns. The pieces that make up each pair of jeans are sewn together on a production line. Each person does one special job. The finished jeans are labeled and packaged for shipping to stores all over the country. At the store, shipments are received, unpacked, and checked. They are put on display so that we can choose the clothing we need and want from the great variety of kinds and styles available. Materials and styles of clothing change, but the basic need for clothing stays the same.
Boy, am I glad I don't have to wear that kind of stuff today.
Me too.
Now, don't anybody move.
Yeah, 1980. Yeah, I need to see if I have all three editions. It would be interesting to kind of see what has changed, even in that kind of time span. Like, chances are Clothing was probably a film that was made in the 30s, early 40s, back when Irpy was making the films, and then Encyclopedia Britannica bought them. And then I believe the Clothing, the second edition, is from the 60s, late 60s probably. Yeah, I just think it'll be interesting. So one of the reasons that we watch, let me disappear for a second, that we watch these films is because it says sugarcane, but when I put it on the scanner, it says, Asia, a Continental Overview. So sometimes a film gets in the wrong can. And I don't know if I have sugarcane anywhere. So, I mean, I guess one of the things I could do is look for the can Asia, a Continental Overview, and see if sugarcane's in there. But I don't know. So, all right. So here's Asia, a Continental Overview. Enjoy.
Halfway around the world from North America lies the vast continent of Asia. Asia is bordered by oceans on the north, east, and south. On the west, the Ural Mountains, the Ural River, the Caspian Sea, the Caucasus Mountains, and the Black Sea mark the boundary between Asia and Europe. The two continents make up a great landmass, sometimes called Eurasia. But even without Europe, Asia is the largest of all the continents. It is larger in area than North and South America combined, and contains more than half the people of the earth. In this single landmass that extends from below the equator to north of the Arctic Circle, you can expect to find a wide range of living conditions. There are great areas of frozen tundra, tropical rainforests, and vast deserts. In Asia, we will find people living under primitive conditions, farming as their ancestors have done for thousands of years. We will also find modern city dwellers whose ways of life are not much different from ours. We'll find jet airliners following modern airways and camel caravans following ancient trade routes. These are some of the contrasts in the vast continent of Asia. One way of studying the nearly 40 countries that make up Asia is by dividing the continent into 4 large physical regions. The farthest north is a tundra region. Then there are regions of forests, pastures and farms, and dry lands. So here are the 4 regions we're going to study. Let's look first at the frozen tundra region. There are few people in this area, mainly nomadic reindeer herders, hunters and trappers. There are cities, though, like this one, Norilsk, in Siberia, north of the Arctic Circle. But for the most part, the tundra region is a vast, desolate area. Bordering the tundra is the northern forest region. These 2 regions together make up most of that portion of the Soviet Union that lies in Asia. In the northern forest region, or taiga, there is hunting and trapping in the evergreen forests and along the many rivers. Lumbering is an important industry in the taiga. Here on the Yenisei River that flows through Siberia into the Arctic Ocean, a great raft of logs is on its way to a lumber mill. In Siberia, trees of the northern forests are used mainly for paper making and construction. The rivers of the taiga are important sources of fish. These people are citizens of Siberia in the Soviet Union. Remember, these are the northern forest lands of Asia. The southern forest lands of Asia are tropical rainforests. They are found mainly in the countries of Southeast Asia. Rainforests are found in the many countries that make up both the mainland and the neighboring islands. Indonesia and the Philippines are among these island nations. The forest lands of Southeast Asia are important not just for timber. Rubber trees are grown on large plantations in Malaysia and Indonesia. They produce 90% of the world's natural rubber. The soil is fertile here. So where trees are cleared from the land in the forest regions, farming can be done. In this region of tropical rainforests, we find some of the major cities of Asia with populations in the millions. Rangoon in Burma, Bangkok in Thailand, Saigon in South Vietnam, Singapore at the tip of the Malay Peninsula, Jakarta in Indonesia, and Manila in the Philippines. The forest lands are not the most heavily populated in Asia, but they contain far more people than the dry lands of Asia, made up of deserts and mountains and high plateaus. Here are the dry lands, the third large region of Asia. The United States could easily be placed in this vast region with room to spare. Among the mountains are the Himalayas. Here are the highest peaks on Earth. North of the Himalayas, the mountains broaden into a region of high plateaus and deserts. Winds blowing across these lands have lost much of their moisture, and little rain falls. This part of the dry lands is sometimes called Central Asia. It is made up mainly of Nepal, Tibet, Xinjiang, and Mongolia. This is the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. Camels are still important here, as they were in the days of Genghis Khan. The people who live in these vast desert lands of Central Asia are mainly nomads. The southwest part of the dry lands of Asia is usually called the Middle East. The countries of the Middle East are a bridge land between Asia, Europe, and Africa, and extend from Turkey on the west to Afghanistan on the east, to Saudi Arabia on the south. Here are the cities of Istanbul and Tehran. In these ancient lands, rural living conditions are usually quite primitive. Shepherds still graze their herds of camels, goats, and sheep. These are nomad people who must move their flocks to new pastures every few days. Few people per square mile live in the arid regions of Asia, where life has not changed much since ancient times. Ruins of ancient cities, like these of Babylon, are reminders that one of man's earliest civilizations, in Mesopotamia, began here in the dry lands of the Middle East, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, perhaps 5,000 years ago. Today, the land is not as fertile as it once was. But where there is water in these southern dry lands, crops can be grown. Here we will find dates, olives, pomegranates, figs and citrus fruits in the marketplaces. In this dry region of the Middle East, major religions had their beginnings. Ruins of an ancient synagogue stand on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Judaism began in this part of the world. Here, too, are the beginnings of Christianity, as well as Islam, whose followers are called Muslims. Two other major religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, had their beginnings in India, which is in the fourth major region of Asia. This is the pastures and farms region. This part of it is called Southern Asia. Here are the countries of India and East and West Pakistan. The region of pastures and farms extends into Eastern Asia. Here are the countries of China and Formosa, North and South Korea, and Japan. The pastures and farms region also includes much of Southeast Asia. In this region, most of the people of Asia are found, with great populations concentrated in the fertile river valleys and deltas. In China, with more than 700 million people, the main rivers are the Huang, or Yellow River, the Yangtze, and the Sea River. China has more people than any other country in the world. Its main cities, with populations in the millions, are Chungking, Canton, Wuhan, Tianjin, Peking, and Shanghai. This is Shanghai, a seaport on the east coast of China, where the Yangtze River empties into the China Sea. Shanghai has a population of about 8 million. In Japan, the metropolitan area of Tokyo has about 12 million people. In Southeast Asia, the main rivers are the Mekong, Menam, Salween, and Irrawaddy. In Southern Asia, the main rivers are the Brahmaputra, Ganges, and Indus. Here on the rivers and along the coasts in the pasture and farmland region, we find the cities of Calcutta and Bombay, each with more than 5 million people in their metropolitan areas, and Karachi, Madras, and Delhi. To see an example of farm life in these countries, let's look first at a farmer in India. This farmer is one of the 450 million people of India, the second most highly populated country in the world. He is a poor man, working long, hard hours with primitive farm tools. He depends on his own hand labor and on the labor of animals to raise rice and millet in his small field. But even with his hard work, an Indian farmer's field barely provides enough food for himself and his family. For farmers in Southeast Asia, life is not as hard. Rice production is much higher than in Southern Asia. Southeast Asia exports much of the rice that it raises. It is the most important rice-producing region in the world. This grain is the main crop in most of the farmlands of Asia, where 90% of the world's rice is grown. Rice needs a warm climate and a great deal of water. In southern and southeastern Asia, the summer monsoon winds from the warm oceans bring great amounts of rain to the farmlands. Nearly 80% of all Asians are poor, hard-working farmers or grazers with a low standard of living. When machinery is used to irrigate the rice fields, it is often powered by human labor. Water is being lifted into this rice paddy. Primitive threshing methods are still common. Even on big projects, work is often done by massed human labor without power-driven machines. But changes are taking place in Asia. This is especially true in Japan. Agriculture is becoming mechanized here, changing centuries-old patterns of life. Motor-operated pumps raise water to irrigate the fields. Lightweight motor-driven threshers are becoming common. Small tractors are replacing animals in the fields. In many parts of Asia, there are signs of similar changes. Factories in China, steel mills in India, a major air terminal in Thailand. All these point up the idea of change. Industrialization is growing. Raw materials like oil and important minerals are making this possible. But the changes are taking place very slowly in Asia as a whole because of the geographic barriers and the historical and political differences that divide the countries and the many peoples of Asia. The lives of the people vary tremendously, depending on where they live in Asia, the largest continent of the earth.
You know, it was geography. We have quite a few geography films, so. But the thing is, if it was sugarcane, it would probably be very similar. It would have a lot of people harvesting, planting, processing, agricultural stuff, so there is going to be some similarities there. Anyways, let's learn about Boys Town in beautiful color. Enjoy.
Education has two primary aims. One, a good education should teach a boy how to live, and two, it should teach him how to make a living. Both are considered essential to his well-being. Each boy is placed in one of three general programs: college preparatory, vocational, farming. Trades and farm students spend half of each day in their specialized fields. College preparatory students devote full time to scholastic courses. Academic fitness alone does not qualify a teacher for a position in the Boys Town school system. For these boys, the product of broken homes, have special needs in terms of human relationships and emotional understanding. The teacher at Boys Town must be equipped by native endowment and training to respond to those needs from the heart as well as from the mind. As in most schools throughout the country, the majority of Boys Town students do not expect to go on to college. They must be prepared, therefore, to earn a living after graduation. Today, the vocational department of Boys Town offers practical training in 15 essential trades, ranging from printing to automobile mechanics, preparing the boy for the real workaday world which he will one day enter. Here he becomes familiar with machines, tools, and working conditions. He experiences the thrill of working with his hands, and he learns that there can be intelligence in his fingers as well as in his mind. Upon completion of a full course in any one of the trades taught here, the boy receives a high school diploma and a trade certificate which qualifies him to enter his chosen field with a 2-year apprentice rating. The agricultural program at Boys Town has developed into one of the best equipped scientifically operated farms in the Middle West, with main crops of corn, wheat, oats, produce, and alfalfa, dairy products, eggs, pork, and beef, most of it consumed on the premises. Basically, the farm is run by men of skill and training in scientific farming and serves as a practical working schoolhouse for those boys who have chosen agriculture as their life's work. It is a rare year that does not bring the 4-H Club of Boys Town at least one award, and usually more, from state and county fairs and from nationally known livestock expositions. Give a boy something he likes to do, and the chances are you'll wind up with a healthy, happy, well-adjusted youngster. Many a homeless and neglected boy gets into trouble for no more reason than that he has never had a chance to find himself. He has been pushed around, backed into a corner, and robbed of any feeling of importance. Like this boy, only recently arrived in Boys Town and not yet adjusted to life here. Healthy social adjustment is not achieved overnight. Sometimes, sad to say, it is never achieved. If you want to know what kind of a future your boy will have, examine his everyday living habits. Does he tend to withdraw and isolate himself from boys his own age? Does he refuse to listen to reason and always insist on having his own way? Does he give up easily in the face of difficulties? These are some of the problems investigated and worked through by the Welfare Department at Boys Town. Fundamentally, the program here is based on counseling and teamwork between the boys, the welfare staff, and the teachers. Most of these boys originally came to Boys Town weighed down by a feeling of inferiority induced by shameful neglect and lack of sympathy in their previous environment. Here at Boys Town, every effort is made to instill in the boy a feeling of self-confidence, of warm acceptance and security. In short, to provide an environment that comes closest to a real home.
We in the Welfare Department and on the teaching staff at Boys Town know that the boy with mental and emotional problems needs help, and we try to see that he gets it. We know, too, that the feeling of inferiority in a boy is a tragic thing. It constitutes one of our major problems here at Boys Town. A boy will know he is worth something only if he can feel wanted, if he is accepted and respected by those with whom he associates every day. We feel that these factors of encouragement and social acceptance are as essential to normal growth in the boy as the food he eats and the air he breathes. The job, as we see it, is to cultivate in the boy a true sense of values in terms of himself and his relationship to others. The important thing to us is not how much talent or ability he has, but what he learns to do with what he has. Free play activity is one of the first and most important lessons in child care and guidance. Through play, he learns how to give as well as take. He finds he can't always have his own way, but must yield to the pressure of the group if he wants to continue as a part of that group. In other words, to belong. This training and discipline enables him in later life to adjust to the requirements of business, social life, and good citizenship.
In the extensive and intensive intramural program, there is room in one or more sports for every boy in Boys Town. This great field house can accommodate hundreds of boys engaged in basketball, wrestling, handball, gymnastics, and volleyball, even while indoor varsity football practice is going on. Out on the track and other play fields, in every season of the year, there is always something taking place. In every sport, at every age level, in house-against-house league competition, or on a most informal and sometimes hilariously haphazard choose-up sides basis. Touchdown! As for the interscholastic competition, football is the big sport, with Boys Town teams year in and year out holding their own and more against some of the crack high school teams from coast to coast. In the early days, Father Flanagan used to say, you've got to take the hungry look out of a boy's eyes before you can start helping him find himself. That tradition has been extended into a maxim that says, feed them first, feed them well, and half your worries are over. This, then, is feeding time at Boys Town. 3 times a day, big, healthy meals planned by expert dietitians and prepared by experienced cooks in ample quantities for growing boys. The age of adolescence is a critical period in a boy's life. Physical and psychological changes are taking place in him. He is growing into a sharper awareness of selfhood. He has social needs that must be filled after school hours and off the playing field. The social side of life at Boys Town takes in a varied program that ranges from weekly movies for the entire population of Boys Town to formal and informal proms, house dances, and parties for the older boys. Religion forms a very important part in the boy's life at Boys Town. Every boy, whether Catholic, Protestant, or Jew, attends his respective religious instruction 2 periods a week. This chapel, donated by a noble and generous lady since passed away, is one of the most beautiful houses of God in America. A monument not only to the citizens of Boys Town, but to all underprivileged children everywhere. In this sanctified building is heard the glorious music of the Boys Town Choir. A group of 60 fresh young voices heard every year on tour in the major concert halls of the nation, from Carnegie Hall in New York to Philharmonic Auditorium in Los Angeles, California.
About a year after my father died, my mother married again. I couldn't seem to get along at home anymore. I started hanging around the streets, looking for trouble, and most times finding it. Some social service lady wrote to Boys Town about me, and the next thing I knew, here I was, and not liking it. I figured to give it a play for a week or two on account of my mother, and then light out somewhere, anywhere. But somehow, I stuck around. No walls, no locked gates to shut me in. Everything wide open. Nobody watching. Funny how you get to feel about that. And no uniforms. Just regular clothes. It made a big difference. I stayed. Well, it's almost 5 years now. And I'll be graduating soon. High school diploma and apprentice machinist card. I made a couple of the teams and sang baritone in the concert choir. I've seen plenty of other kids come here. Some by train or bus, or hobo style, or hitchhiking on their own. Lots of them in pretty bad shape. A few, not many, from juvenile court. They all made out okay. Most of them. How do we feel about this place? Well, it's tough to talk about. What it means to us. Where we might have wound up if we hadn't come here to live. It's home, but that doesn't say it all. We found things here we never figured we'd ever have. The kind of things other guys have, who've got real homes and other kids in the family. About Boys Town? Well, all I can say is, and believe me, that's plenty. It's a place called home.
Every year, almost 500,000 people come to visit. They find that Boys Town is not a correctional institution, that it doesn't belong to any individual or group, or to any civic or governmental agency. They find that Boys Town belongs to and is self-governed by the boys who live here and call it their home. How then is Boys Town supported? Not by money from city, county, state, or federal government, nor from civic or church groups, but entirely by donations from people the world over. People who want to share in providing the unwanted, neglected boy with a home, an education, and a start in life on a footing with more fortunate boys. These citizens of Boys Town know that private donations built the roof over their heads, put the food on their tables, gave them the clothes they wear. But there is no feeling among them of accepting this generosity as their due. There is dignity here, lightheartedness and friendliness, because they feel themselves not objects of public charity, but co-workers in a great social project, building toward a better life in the years to come.
I like how the end is tacked on and the beginning things are kind of tacked on. I'm not sure what the deal with that was, but yeah, I mean, so having kids work on a farm, that was part of what was happening with a lot of institutions, like mental institutions and some prisons. You know, they basically were like, well, we're just going to give them some sort of I can't remember what it's called, but it was of a time where, yeah, that was accepted. Oh, they're working on a farm, so they're learning skills and they're raising food that they themselves will eat. So they're becoming self-sufficient. That was totally accepted at the time. I'm sure there's all sorts of transgressions that have been and are taking place at boys' towns, but yeah, it's interesting. That promotional thing, because so this would be shown, I'm guessing, and then it would be like help support, you know, so help sponsor us, send us donations, send us, you know, whatever, and this would be shown all over as a way to raise money. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. Speaking of raising money, if you want to support AV Geeks and the orphan films that we are taking care of, that we put to work in the fields, you can buy us coffee at ko-fi.com /avgeeks, or you can go to patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are great ways to support us. You can also visit our 24/7 channel at avgeeks.com. And in 2023, I'm going to be working on, I think, a Roku channel. I think we're really going to do a push and see if we can come up with a way to do this and make it ad-supported and help support the time and energy it takes to do stuff like this. It certainly will continue doing the daily shows, but I'm trying to bridge out, get more eyeballs. And because your eyeballs are great, but I want more eyeballs. Anyways, that's 2023 for you. But join us tomorrow. As always, please rewind, or the devil, the 919 rewind devil will get you. But, you know, love each other, etc. Whether you're a mouse or a cat. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thursday? Is that right? Oh boy. Anyways, talk soon. Bye.